Right, good evening and welcome to the June 13th, 2017 Ashland Zoning Board of Appeals meeting, officially called the meeting to order. First item, as always, minutes. We had extensive minutes. Any comments? Anyone have a chance to review?
I made a couple of suggestions to Josh for brief changes on line 28, the date that the was not May 9th, but May 23rd, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And there was also a sentence where on line 234 and 235, it didn't make any sense. I think there were a couple of words that were out of order. Sorry about that, folks. The sentence should read, Mr. Trefethan stated that one of the members that was sitting on this hearing was not present at tonight's hearing.
Okay.
And those were the only two changes I had.
Anyone else?
Nothing from me. Nothing from me.
Scrivener spelled with a V or a B.
Yeah. We already
Ironically,
Yes.
that's the, okay. the only
Yeah.
All right. Okay, good. So seeing no other revisions, entertain a motion to approve as revised by John.
I so moved.
All second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. And I believe those are our only minutes, right?
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
All right, so next agenda item, continuation of the following matter from May 23rd, 2017 meeting. The Joseph E. Connolly Trust and Michael J. Connolly and Sons, Inc., parties under agreement to purchase the properties, have applied for a special permit under Chapter 282, Section 3.12 and 9-3, 9.3 of the Ashland bylaws to allow a commercial parking facility for parking of school buses and bus drivers' automobiles when buses are being operated. The properties are located at 11, 13, and 75 Chestnut Street and 10, 12, and 13 Brook Street in the Highway Commerce and Industrial Zoning Districts. A public hearing will be held on May 9th, 2017 at 8 p.m. in the Board of Selectmen's room located at Ashland Town Hall, 101 Main Street, Ashland, Mass. Parties wishing to be heard on this matter should appear at that time and place indicated above. And so those hearings were held. We are now in the public comment was closed. I missed that last meeting, but I'm not a voting member. But I read through the minutes. Public comment was closed. Deliberations were begun, and because I'm assuming because of the lateness of the evening, it was continued until tonight to finalize deliberations and then vote if possible. So, in the interim, a draft decision has been circulated, which was then edited by town council today and by Josh. And so I think at this point, Josh, do you want to run through like sections 1, 2, and 3, so the background, any revisions that you made today that you want to point out?
In the first three sections, there were not a lot of changes. That's not the version I want. In section 3, the hearing, I fleshed that out a bit more. A bit more explanation of what happened, the topics that were discussed, things like that. There wasn't any substantive changes, even though there were substantial changes. It was adding in that we spoke about the chain link fence, adding in that the applicant added no snow disposal, signage, things like that.
Okay, because this came over late,
Yeah.
does the members, well, if everyone's had a chance to read it, great. Otherwise, do you want me to just read through it now and we can discuss sort of on the fly?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to read
Okay.
the email.
I haven't seen it.
There is one thing, there is one thing I would like to address of the section that Josh just read, and it was something that I believe was left out of the decision and certainly should be in, and it's on page 2, under paragraph Roman numeral 2, subparagraph B. One of the documents that was submitted to us via email after the filing of the application, but before the initial May 9th hearing, was an email letter dated May 5th of 2017 from attorney Amanda Zurati of Petrini and Associates on behalf of Elaine Kelly and certain of the other abutters. It was an email with legal arguments, which were discussed during both open meeting sessions of the hearing and by all parties and considered by the board, so that clearly was an inadvertent error in not listing it as one of the documents.
So throw that in between 1 and 2 if we're going chronologically here.
I would think so, yes.
Okay. Now, Josh, can you make these changes and have something finalized tonight? Like, do you have a laptop that you can actually do it, or?
I don't have a laptop. I can make the changes and then sneak out.
All right, well, we'll see how many there are.
Yeah,
Because if we're close to a final, it might be good just to get the final.
yeah.
Okay. So that'd just be, so B, between B1 and 2 on page 2, email from, what's her full name?
Amanda Zuretti, Z-U-R-E-T-T-I, of the firm Petrini and Associates, and the letter referenced that she was writing on behalf of Elaine Kelly, K-E-L-L-E-Y, and certain other abutters.
Elaine Kelly and other abutters. Okay. Did you get all that, Josh?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. So then in section 3, which starts on the bottom of page 3, looking at, so Josh's changes, I don't mean Josh, Adam's changes are in blue, correct?
That's right.
Those aren't really substantive at all. So really wordsmithing on page 4 essentially. But then we get down to the additions that Josh made. So why don't I just read through it? If people want to edit, obviously there's a typo in the very bottom of
Yep.
page 4 that we all see, but so he adds in additionally the potential environmental impacts of refueling the buses on site and the prohibiting of
Of the plowing, yep.
of the plowing of snow into Cold Spring Brook were discussed at the May 9, 2017 hearing. The applicant gave a response regarding refueling process. I want to say regarding the refueling process.
Yeah.
Including the mitigation procedures in case of a spill. In quotes, no snow disposal signs were added in the southeastern areas of Lot 3 that are adjacent to Cold Spring Brook to the revised plans as requested by the conservation agent. New paragraph. The laws regarding the idling of the school buses were discussed, and the relevant state law, MGL Chapter 90, Section 16A, were referred to. The applicants say that all buses are less than 3 years old and have anti-idling technology installed. New paragraph. One of the residents of Brook Street asked that the chain link fencing, it's a typo, is that spelled right? No, maybe it is. Fencing along Brook Street be replaced. The applicant agreed. The applicant also agreed to clean the border between the lots and Brook Street when the fence is replaced and to keep the lots clean in the future. The next paragraph was modified and revised. Additional topics discussed were, and that was crossed out. Now it says, The nature of and challenges presented by abutting commercial and residential properties were also discussed, as several of the homes are in the Highway Commerce zoning district and several homes are located in the residential B zone. Next paragraph was edited. The board received information and opinions from the applicant, the aforesaid attorneys, and several residents. New paragraph. Actually, that's the end of the background section. So, anything that people wanted to either revise and or add into that section?
No, I'm comfortable with that.
No, I'm good.
Stu, you got anything?
No.
No, okay. All right, so at this point, we're all good with 1, 2, and 3, correct? All right, 4, findings. So, Adam, did you want to run through any of this?
I think I can do that relatively quickly.
Okay,
Like,
yeah.
Section 4 findings, which begins on the bottom of page 5, continues on through page 6 and onto the top of page 7. These are the requisite findings, some of which are just what was discussed at the last session of the public hearing, and others of which are what's required by section 9.3.2 of your zoning bylaw. So many of the changes here are, to use your term, Phil, wordsmithing, just clarifying. We use terms like locus. We defined them early on in the decision. I wanted to be consistent throughout so there was no question as to what was being referred to. So in terms of the substantive changes, subparagraph G previously read the lots in question. Now it says the locus is currently owned by W.D. Homer, LLC, and is under agreement. That should probably say is under agreement now that it says locus, just so the tense is matching. Is under agreement for sale to the applicant. And then it was unclear because it said this relates to a decision of the Ashland Planning Board, and I thought it needed to be clearer as to how it related to that decision. So Josh made a further change here, which is why it's in red. The locus was split off from the rest of the parking lot along Chestnut Street as approved in a decision by the Ashland Planning Board made on October 25th, 2016. So that provides the clarity there that I was asking for, so you can disregard my comment in the margin there on your page. It's been addressed. The other comment that I had, and it hasn't been addressed, and you'll have to forgive me because my notes don't reflect the answer to the, well, I think they reflect the answer to this question, but I could certainly be mistaken. There was brief discussion at the first session of the public hearing and continued on a bit to the last session about the secondary means of access that was removed from the plan between the first and second sessions of the hearing. And it was explained that the reason why that secondary access was removed, that second curb cut as we've called it, was because it required additional permits or approvals that were just far too complicated to obtain. My understanding is that that's because that curb cut lies within the protected zone under the Rivers Protection Act. The reference here in the decision that was drafted is it to being in the flood zone. It reads in paragraph L, the plan submitted on May 23rd, 2017 show a proposed future curb cut from lot 3 onto Chestnut Street. It should be noted that the original plans submitted had 2 curb cuts onto Chestnut Street, but this was altered in the final plans. The curb cut on lot 2 was removed due to the reconfiguration of the parking, and the curb cut on lot 3 was changed to quote-unquote proposed due to the potential regulatory requirements relating to the flood zone covering the property. Again, my understanding is that it wasn't the flood zone, but it was the fact that that curb cut would lie within the jurisdiction of the Rivers Protection Act, and therefore would be overly complicated to permit. But I just think we should be accurate here as to why it is that that secondary access was not pursued, because you later state, and we'll get there eventually, you later state in the decision that you're essentially approving of that secondary access if the applicant chooses to install it in the future.
If I could, it is also in the flood zone from Cold Spring Brook, and therefore would have to go before the planning board. And so that's what I was referring to there. is correct that it is also a riverfront property, and perhaps it should state that.
I was gonna say, was there anything wrong with including both?
Right.
Could
Yeah.
potentially be in, and just put them both in, and that way the decision covers both.
That's fine.
Stu, comfortable with that? All right.
That's all I had on page 6. Moving on to page 7, there were a few tweaks there as well, and those are not particularly substantive. I just reviewed my notes and compared them to what Josh had drafted on your behalf, and I had a few additional details relative to the 6 criteria in section 9.3.2 that were specifically addressed at the conclusion of the last session of the public hearing, and I just wanted to be sure that my notes and the additional detail got into the decision. It's always better to provide more versus less detail there with respect to how the criteria are satisfied. So you can see my blue, my revisions in blue text, and unless you disagree with those, again, that's what my notes reflected was discussed.
All right, so any comment on those revisions that Adam made?
Nope. Nope, they seem fine to me.
Okay. All right, so then we get into section 5, the actual decision and conditions. And let's see. There's enough of these that we should probably just read through each of them and make sure we're happy with each one of them. So, all right, so the first paragraph hasn't changed. That's granting the special permit subject to the proposed conditions, subject to the following conditions. The original A and B have been relocated to the end, and now X and Y. So the new A reads, approval of this plan contemplates and authorizes a proposed future curb cut subject to receipt of permits.
Yeah.
You want to just say like of requisite permits or whatever. Okay. From the Ashland Highway Division, the Ashland Conservation Commission, and the Ashland Planning Board, as shown on the proposed site plan from Lot 3 onto Chestnut Street, should the applicant hereafter wish to construct the same. Okay. So I'll read that one again. Approval of this plan contemplates and authorizes a proposed future curb cut subject to receipt of permits from the Ashland Highway Division, the Ashland Conservation Commission, and the Ashland Planning Board, as shown on the proposed site plan from Lot 3 onto Chestnut Street, should the applicant hereafter wish to construct the same. Now, do we know that they're going to need permits from all those, or we're not sure at this point?
So I'll
That's loud.
well, sure is. I'll defer to Josh with respect to his red line changes, which add references to Concom and Planning Board, although I would tend to agree that if, I'll defer to Josh. Certainly Conservation Commission, we just discussed the fact that it'd be within the Rivers Protection Act jurisdiction. I added in Highway Division because curb cut permits always come from the Highway Division, so that's an absolute requirement under your general code. With respect to Planning Board, I'll defer to you, Josh, as to whether Planning Board is required to sign off on that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I just always hate to put it like a finite list. You know, what if there are others? You know, do you contemplate any others?
Any others that could,
Any other permits from any other boards?
yeah, something like that. So put that in there.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly can. I mean, I had at one point I had. 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 additional approvals and permits may be required by other boards and committees.
You didn't like that, Josh? I mean, Adam?
Yes, if you turn to page 11,
Yeah, it's,
in green text, it's now condition Y. This is a standard condition that
Okay.
we've included that says any and all permits. and
Oh, okay,
approvals.
the catch-all that we.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Any other edits to that first condition?
No.
Nope.
Okay. B, the project shall be limited to the improvements shown on the proposed site plan, subject to and with the benefit of all notes and references shown thereon. That's it. That one seems pretty straightforward. The project shall be completed in substantial conformance with the proposed site plan and the other above referenced documents unless otherwise specified herein. Any substantial deviation from the same shall require review by and approval of the board. Seems pretty perfunctory, but. Alright. D, no buses exiting from lot 3 as shown on the proposed site plan shall make a left turn onto Brook Street. I know that you guys discussed that. No buses or cars exiting from lot 2 as shown on the proposed site plan shall make a right turn onto Brook Street. Great. F, the applicant shall install clear and conspicuous traffic signs to direct all bus and car traffic from the locus down Brook Street towards Chestnut Street. Signs shall be placed on the locus and not in the public right of way. Alright? G, parking shall be limited to school buses, employee drivers, and employees exercising managerial and supervisory control over the locus. H, parking shall be located and utilized as set forth on the proposed site plan. There shall be no more than 60 school bus parking spaces and no car parking spaces on lot 3. There shall be no more than 9 school bus parking spaces and 61 car parking spaces on lot 2. All parking spaces shall be striped. The snow storage area in the eastern corner of lot 2 shall be diagonally striped and marked as no parking in quotes or the equivalent. I, a sanitary porta potty to be serviced by contract with the vendor will be located as shown on the proposed site plan on lot 2 for the use by the company's employees. The porta potty shall be fenced as shown on the above plans.
Should we add something that it should be serviced during normal business hours?
I don't think so.
No?
No. Well, we did in the next paragraph.
We do with respect to the
Dumpster. Yeah, I would think that kind of wording would have to go back up to the porta potty too.
What's your thinking?
Have you ever heard of porta potty serviced? They don't make any noise. Dumpsters make a lot of noise.
I have no doubt they make more noise than a porta potty, but I don't think it does any harm, and if it's silent, it doesn't do any harm to have it in just to make sure that it's done during normal business hours and not thereafter. I would assume it'll be done during normal business hours.
Sure, whatever way you want to go.
The next one we say 8 to 4. You want to say normal business hours on that one? Or do you want to put an actual time in?
Time.
On I or J?
We're on I right now.
Okay.
The porta potty.
Yeah.
You want to do semi-expanded hours since it's quieter?
I mean, I'm comfortable with that. If we wanted to put specific hours on, that's fine.
Well, we did in the
Well,
next one.
we don't know
Yeah.
what's in that contract, right? It says service by contract.
It's your proposal. What do you want to say?
Let's be
Just normal
consistent,
business.
8 a.m. to 4 p.m., be consistent with the dumpster.
Yeah, make it the same, so there's no confusion between the porta potty and the dumpster.
And why do we do 4 instead of 5 on the dumpster?
I don't know.
I mean,
I made the modification on the document you're looking at because my notes indicated you said 8 to 4 at your meeting.
Okay,
I've got no preference. It could be 8 to 5. That's just what my notes have.
okay, that's fine. Then we should be consistent with what we
Okay,
say.
all right. Got that, Josh?
Yep.
All right, and then so on to J, a dumpster located on lot 2 as shown on the proposed site plan will be used for the depositing of trash from daily bus sweeping and any employee trash. The dumpster shall be fenced as shown on the above plans. The dumpster shall be emptied only between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. and should not be emptied on any Sunday. K, other than routine maintenance, i.e. checks for leaks, fluid checks, wiper and bulb replacements, and repairs to mirror and safety equipment, no oil changes or other vehicle repairs shall be performed on the locus. All bus repairs and non-routine maintenance, including any engine and body work, shall be performed at the company's maintenance facility located in Walpole, Mass, or at another off-site location. Okay. L, the required school bus backup alarm shall be activated only one time, only once. That looks like a typo.
No, it goes, because there are two different.
Oh,
paragraph
one, I'm
one.
sorry, I thought, sorry. Okay, so the required school bus backup alarm shall be activated only, 1, during mandatory pre-trip inspections, and 2, when parking as the buses back into spaces at the end of their runs. Okay. M, lot 2 shall be finished to ensure that all water runs in an easterly direction away from the abutting residential properties. Now, are we talking about grading there? Is finished is an odd word.
It should be grading.
So lot 2 shall be graded to ensure.
Yeah.
N, idling of buses and cars shall be subject to applicable legal requirements set forth in MGL Chapter 90, Section 16A and 30 CMR 7.11. The applicant, O, the applicant shall install and maintain the wood fence around the perimeter of the property as shown on the proposed site plan. Such fence shall be made of wood, being the wood fence. Such fence shall be made of wood, be of a natural color, and be 6 feet in height. P, the applicant shall replace the chain link fence along Brook Street abutting lot 2 and lot 3. The applicant shall clean the area around the fence of all garbage, yard debris, and other refuse prior to or during installation of the new fence. Q, no bus going on a regular route may leave the property before, where are you?
It's blank. Phil, it's blank.
Oh, it's blank. Oh, I see.
Fill it in.
So what was discussed?
Well, during the hearing, there was a reference that I believe it was 2 buses leave early at 5:30 a.m., but that the majority of the buses leave later than that, and I believe it was all or almost all are gone by 6:15 a.m. But I know with the original draft there was a question about 6 o'clock, but I believe the applicant stated that 2 buses leave at 5:30. So
You want to do a carve out for those 2 buses, or do you just want to say 5:30?
well, I can foresee things changing over time with the requirement of the towns that the buses go to, and I would not want to put a restricted time on it that would complicate things down the road, but I also don't want to have all of the buses revving up at 5:30 and making an excessive amount of noise. But if we're just simply setting a time, I think we need to do 5:30. I mean, with the
Other input? What's that?
That sounds fine.
we have to pick a time. We should make a reasonable shot at the time, and that's probably the better one because of the fluidity, changeable nature of the business.
If I could suggest.
Yeah.
So I reviewed my notes and I didn't have a specific time, and my recollection is the same as
Yeah.
yours, John, that there was some discussion about when the majority of buses left, but
Right.
that there were some earlier.
Yeah.
But
I
that was discussed. My notes just didn't
Yeah.
reflect it. You've got the applicant sitting here in the front row. The public hearing is closed. That
Right.
means no
I
new
mean,
evidence can come in. You
my
can ask
notes
for
were fairly
clarification.
specific, because I thought it was an important issue, and Stephen Connolly said 2 buses leave at 5:30. So if we can do it without a time frame, that I think would perhaps be ideal. But I also don't want to expose the neighborhood unnecessarily.
At 2:30 in the morning, you know. I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Up there.
If for some reason though, let's say for whatever reason, business requirements of school hours change, they could come back and ask for a modification of that as needed,
It would
right?
require a modification.
Right.
That's correct.
Alright, so 5:30 seems to hit everything.
Okay.
The word regular is an important word. If there's ice and snow, you might leave early. I know that happens.
I saw that Josh had added that, and I think that that's appropriate. I mean, there are going to be circumstances
Right.
that are unusual and beyond control that might require the buses to start up earlier. There may be unique circumstances where there's a field trip early on a particular morning and a bus has to leave, and
Sure.
you don't want those to be sort of impromptu violations each and every time something like that occurs.
Okay. Alright, so we will just, so it'll read, no bus going on a regular route may leave the property. We use locus everywhere else.
Yep.
May leave the locus before 5:30 a.m.
The key word's in regular route.
Bill, that's on O2.
Yeah,
Just change
good point.
Project, property to locus.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, you could just do Control F and find out.
Right, exactly. Okay, QR. Per section 5.4.2 of the zoning bylaw, the applicant shall provide landscaped buffers at the perimeter of the locus to screen parking areas from adjacent residential uses. A landscaped area at least 6 feet wide shall be provided. Said area to contain at least 1 tree every 10 feet with an approximately 3, okay, I guess, it seems awkward, but with an approximately 3-to-1 ratio of evergreen to deciduous trees and shrubbery, which will form a visually impermeable barrier within 2 years of planting the same. In keeping with the purpose and intent of section 5.4.2, namely to create a continuous vegetative screen between residential and non-residential uses, but also in recognition of the watering, maintenance, and upkeep responsibilities associated therewith, as well as personal preferences as to landscaping variety and design. Nothing herein shall be deemed to prohibit the applicant from installing the landscape buffers required hereunder in whole or in part upon a neighboring property or properties, or from providing a stipend or making other payment to the owners of said property or properties for them to do so, subject to receipt of appropriate permissions therefore. So take your time, read through that one, because I know that one got a lot of attention. So is this in conjunction with the 6-foot fence, or is this separate?
In conjunction.
In conjunction.
The 6-foot fence was already referenced in an earlier condition. The wood fence made of wood.
Right, that. So wood fence, 6 feet, or is it
Well,
6 feet wood fence?
so it doesn't specify here the order or orientation of fence versus landscaping. It simply requires the buffer. I mean, so this is a change, and Phil, you didn't have the benefit of being at the last session of the public hearing, but one of the things that was discussed was the challenge in imposing a condition upon a project that requires modification of the plans when the plans have not been modified as part of the process. And the best example that I could give, and it wasn't one from your board, but it was an example of a matter that came before the planning board, the Dunkin' Donuts project of a few years ago, where the board opted to include a condition that prohibited access onto Pond Street. And the plan that had been provided showed that access. They wanted to approve it without the access, so they included, with my assistance, conditions as part of the decision that essentially approved the project as shown on the plans, latest revision of those plans, subject to, and then we had a series of conditions. Number one, the access being removed. Number two, the area where the access is shown being grassed and landscape. Number three, the landscaping to consist of X, Y, and Z. So we're in a similar circumstance here where you're requiring a landscape buffer, but the plan doesn't show a 6-foot wide landscape buffer in all the locations where it's required if you read section 5.4.2 of your bylaw. So you're imposing a condition that is going to require one of two things the way that it's been drafted. Either a reorientation of the parking spaces and redesign to some extent of the site to facilitate the addition of these buffers, or consistent with the language in the latter part of the condition, some sort of a workout with the neighbors where the applicant is able to obtain the right to place the landscaping on neighboring property or provide a stipend if that's acceptable to the neighbors. This was, it reads like a relatively complicated condition, and that's because it sort of needs to. We're walking a fine line here between compliance with section 5.4.2 and providing some flexibility here given the nature of the project and what's been presented to the board and the desire of the board as expressed at the last session of the public hearing to approve the project.
Thoughts on that one?
I mean, I think this sets forth what we discussed and what we wanted to do, and to give the parties the option, if there's a mutual agreement, to put the buffer on Butter's property, fine, but that we're going to require that the buffer in some manner or form be there. I think this states it very, very clearly and very, very well.
Anything else on that one? All right. S. The applicant shall conform in all respects to the conditions set forth in that certain correspondence of the Ashland Conservation Agent dated May 19, 2017. The conditions are as follows. I-1. Signs shall be displayed in the existing parking lot prohibiting storage of snow along the easterly portions of 12 Brook Street and 75 Chestnut. Is that Chestnut Street? Which immediately abut the bank of Cold Spring Brook, parenthetically a tributary of the Sudbury River. 2. Snow storage and removal shall be compliant with DEP snow disposal guidance document. 3. Wetland resource area, parenthetically 310 CMR 10.02 1. The 25-foot no disturb zone and the 100-foot buffer zone are present on the properties, and no work shall be done within any of these areas without receiving prior approval from the Ashland Conservation Commission. Actual conditions now spelled out.
I just added that in as an explanation.
Oh, so we can cross that out.
Yeah.
That's not going to be in there.
Yeah.
T. The board, the town's building inspector, and their respective agents may enter onto, view, and inspect the locus during regular business hours without notice, so as to ensure compliance with the terms and conditions hereof.
Should change inspector to commissioner.
Thank you. U, all property taxes due in the locus or any part thereof shall be paid in full. In accordance with Article 3 of the December 3, 1986 special town meeting and GL, might as well do MGL to be consistent. In MGL Chapter 40, Section 57, the special permit now granted is suspended upon issuance pending payment of all such taxes in full, which seems to contemplate that there are outstanding taxes. Are there outstanding taxes?
No, this is a standard condition you've included in all your special permits.
Okay. Page 11, sorry, V. This special permit approval shall not take effect until a copy of this approval is recorded at the Middlesex South District Registry of Deeds, bearing the certification of the town clerk that 20 days have elapsed after the approval was filed with the town clerk's office, and that no appeal was filed, or that if such appeal has been filed, that has been dismissed or denied, or where applicable, that an appeal has been filed within such time. A copy of the recorded document bearing the date of recording and the book and page number shall be delivered to both the planning department and building department before any building permits are issued. W, should the operator of the bus company change or a different bus company occupy, wait a second, should the operator of the bus company change or a different bus company occupy the site? I think that should say occupy. This special permit may only be transferred by approval of this board as an informal matter. Record with the Registry of Deeds any modification to the special permit. I'm gonna need a little background on that one. What are we doing there, Josh?
So on that one, it was discussed by staff that that if there is a change of operator, that we wanted the opportunity to have them come in and just reaffirm that they had certain criteria they had to follow, and that if some other operator comes in, they would still have to abide by the rules here, and wouldn't be able to do whatever they please.
Mr. Costa?
Well, I have a recommendation, but I'm not going to tell the board how it ought to proceed, but I do have a recommendation. Special permits can either be transferable or non-transferable. I like the either-or approach. I don't like the sort of split the baby approach. The concern that I have with the way that this is drafted is, so it seems to be making a distinction between the transfer of a special permit being handled as a quote-unquote informal matter, whereas modifications to the special permit, other modifications, are handled as a true special permit modification with a public hearing. The issue becomes if a transfer isn't being handled as an informal matter, you just heard the purpose of that review is to ensure that the new operator meets certain standards. Well, what if the operator doesn't meet certain standards? Who's going to exercise discretion to determine that that's not good enough? Well, it can't be staff, because there's no such process that exists for staff to exercise that kind of discretion. No authority under the Zoning Act to do so. So it's either this board that has to review that, in which case it should be handled with a public hearing, much the same as any other modification, which is how I had originally drafted it. Or the other option would be, if the only real purpose is to be sure that you know who's operating the facility and that the permit isn't transferred without knowledge to the town, you could require notice. When they modified the 40B law back in 2008 and they recodified the regulations, they provided for notice to the municipality upon transfer of a comprehensive permit. Zoning Board of Appeals has no say. You can't prohibit the transfer, but you're required to receive notice of that transfer so that you know who's the present holder of the permit at any one time. So you can go either way, but I would either go nothing more than notice or require them to come in for a modification if they're going to transfer it. But I wouldn't go in between, because it's challenging when you're, especially in a smaller community where you don't have any authority pursuant to bylaw to allow staff to make determinations on behalf of the board. It's
So when you're saying it can be transferable, that's as of right without a hearing?
the rule of thumb would be, if you didn't address it in your decision, that special permits are covenants that run with the land.
Right.
So when they're recorded in the chain of title, they can be transferred, and they are automatically transferred when the property is transferred. You have the ability by law to include transferability provisions in your decision that says, no, it's not non-transferable. Or allow it to be transferred upon, as is being done here, upon application to the board for a modification to the special permit.
That
That's-
seems to be the
that's
reasonable
where I
way to
think we
go.
should go.
Got it.
Stu?
That makes total
Yeah.
sense.
Okay.
I think we're all in agreement on that.
So how do we word that?
Do
I would defer to Adam.
Yeah, do you have boilerplate on that?
I think we go back to some extent to the language before one of these changes. So it says, I'm going to read it the way that I would write the entire condition W. Should the operator of the bus company change or a different bus company occupy the site, this special permit may only be transferred by approval of this board, subsequently recorded with the Registry of Deeds. Any modifications to this special permit, and then you might say, comma, including a transfer thereof, comma, will require a special permit modification with a public hearing. So you're taking out the as an informal matter in red, that's coming out of the version that you've got in front of you. You're keeping in the word subsequently. And then in the next sentence, any modification to the special permit, after permit, you're gonna add in the phrase, including a transfer hereof, will require a special permit modification with a public hearing.
I don't know if we need the original free, should the operator of the bus company change or a different bus company occupy the site? I mean, just the special permit may only be transferred, that contemplates a, change in ownership, right? It's just, that
True.
first part's confusing
It's
to
awkward.
me. Is it a change in management? Is it a change in ownership? Do you feel like it's needed?
No, it's not my edit, so no, I'm
Yeah.
okay without it.
Okay, let's just go back to the way it was then. Special permit, well, that'd be my recommendation, but what do you guys want?
I concur.
How is your version gonna read?
The original version was, this special permit may only be transferred by approval of this board, subsequently recorded with the registry of deeds and modification. So basically just has it how it reads now. Just take out that red part in the beginning.
And then add the transfer thing at the,
Yeah,
any modifications to the special
Right.
permit,
Anybody-
including a transfer, will require a special permit
Right.
modification.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You get all that, Josh?
Yep.
Okay. Transfer, okay. X, during construction, the applicant shall conform to all local, state, and federal laws regarding noise, vibration, dust, and blocking of any roadways. The applicant shall at all times use all reasonable means to minimize inconvenience to nearby residences and businesses. Hours of construction shall be limited to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., Monday through Saturday, with no construction on Sunday, or any state or federal holiday. Hours of construction, as aforesaid, shall be enforced by the Ashland Police Department. Why? To the extent that the project requires any other permits or approvals, whether as a result of any condition hereby imposed or otherwise, the applicant shall comply with any requirements of any other official board, commission, or committee of the town of Ashland to obtain the required permits or approvals. And then Z, should the applicant fail to substantially commence use hereunder, except for good cause. The special permit hearing granted shall expire 24 months from the date this decision is filed with the town clerk. Okay. That is it. Any other proposed edits,
I just want-
additions? Yeah.
I just want to go back and make sure we've covered something that we had talked about, and that was in the applicant's legal brief, I would call it, in its initial presentation. Exhibit A was a memo that the operations manager, Stephen Connolly, had prepared to all of the bus yard drivers, and on the back page it listed a number of things that the drivers were being required to do as company policy. There had been some discussion of making this a condition of the approval. In my review of it, it appears that the items that are addressed in bullet points in Attorney Efron's presentation that included this as Exhibit A are met in the conditions, but I want to make sure we're all comfortable with that and satisfied with that. And that we just didn't overlook it.
Okay.
Okay. I'm comfortable with it. I think we've covered everything in it.
Everything that's in there is.
Okay.
Just for wordsmith purposes, I don't know if you're capitalizing special permit all throughout, but in Z, it's a lack of capitalization for special permit.
Okay, yep.
I mean,
On
it's
Z,
menial.
It's a legal document. We should be
Yeah.
consistent. It's going to be filed with the Registry of Deeds for all time.
They don't need it.
So, if I could, I just want to make sure that I have
Yep.
all of the
Yep.
changes. So I'm adding the email in on page 2. That I skipped over.
So that'll be the new B.
That'll be the new
Two.
B2, yes.
Yep.
A few small edits on the bottom of page 4 and at the top of page 5.
Yep.
I'm adding in on finding L, I'm adding in both that they have to, that the regulatory requirements are the flood zone and the Rivers Protection Act.
On that same page, Josh, up above in item G, the word "are" should be "is."
Yes, yep. Page 8, I am taking out an A on note A.
Yes.
On page 9, I'm adding in on I.
Oh,
I'm adding in the porta potty shall be emptied only
Serviced.
between the
Serviced.
hours of
yeah.
service. Yeah.
Service. No, when the emptying in the lot.
Yeah. Under M, I'm changing finished to graded. Under O, changing property to locus. Also doing that under Q and adding 530. On page 10, under note S1, I'm adding street after Chestnut. I am taking out my explanation at the end of 3. Under T, I am taking out inspector and replacing that with commissioner. Changing to MGL in note U. Note W shall be this special permit may only be transferred by approval of this board, subsequently recorded with the Registry of Deeds. Any modifications to this special permit, including a transfer thereof, will require a special permit modification with a public hearing.
Yep.
And capitalizing special permit in note Z. And we are out of the alphabet, so we have to stop.
Okay. So
Is there anything else that I missed?
that's all I had.
That's all I have.
So that's good, because then we can do a motion based on those modifications. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the decision as just modified. And I always forget, roll vote on this, Adam?
It doesn't
By
need to,
name.
it doesn't need to be obviously the voting
The three
members or
voting
those who were
members,
named.
right.
Mhm.
All right, so who, I'll make the motion as not a voting member, so I'll make a motion to approve the decision as modified. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of the voting members? Say
Aye.
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 That is unanimous. Anyone opposed? No. Okay, good. You think you can do that now, Josh? Because we have, if you can't, you can't, but we have some other stuff to get done.
Yes, I can, yeah.
Okay, that'd be great. Okay, that ends that. Thank you for showing up. That's it.
Thank you very much for your.
Yep.
All right.
Alright, where is my agenda? Oh, there it is.
Is there
Yeah.
anything else on the agenda?
Okay, so we've got staff
Staff
updates
updates
and
and
administration, board reorganization, including discussion of board vacancies and membership. Do we have staff updates before?
We do not. I mean, the only thing is, I mean, I don't know if the two people may be confused by the big blue binder in front of them. It's just the laws, bylaws, you know,
Yeah, that's great.
Bible.
Yeah.
everything a growing ZBA person needs.
Good, thanks.
All right, I
Thank
will
you.
hammer this out.
Thanks, Josh. So, board reorganization, I had it all printed out, and I don't know if I brought it, everyone's terms. Can we bring that, 'cause I had it, and I left it at home.
I think I
I
got it.
yeah, I can find it. Let's see.
Or not.
Well, so the bottom line, though, is that my term expires in August, and I'm not gonna ask to be reappointed. And I could continue being chair through August, but I'm out of town for at least two. Now, we don't have anything else, I don't think, on the agenda right now, but I'm out of town for two of the next, 4 scheduled meetings anyway. So I think it makes sense to reorganize. So that leaves the 3 full members of myself, John, and Tom. By seniority, it would be Stu, I think Brian, and Smeet. I always like Smurdy.
Yeah.
Smurdy. I always
Yeah.
feel like I say it wrong. Smurdy. So with me not being reappointed, Stu, do you want to be a full member?
Sure.
You'd be next in line, okay. Which then leaves, that'll leave 2 open seats. We have, Josh sent us some talent bank forms. In the past, we've never interviewed anyone. It's not our role to appoint new members.
Board, yeah, selectmen.
The selectmen do it. So, occasionally I will get a call, sometimes I won't, about, a particular applicant just as the chair, but, that's their decision to make. So, I guess the question then is, between the 2 of you, who wants to be chair?
Well, Tom has seniority, so I would defer to his decision as to what he wishes to do.
I don't wish to be the chair. But I think an interesting point should be, the chairman doesn't necessarily have to be a full-time member, a full member.
I think it does.
It
does?
does.
I think it does, yeah.
Well, the Board of Selectmen don't do it that way.
Well, they're all full members.
Oh, okay, there's no, yeah, they're all.
You might think
elected,
some
okay,
act like they do,
Yeah.
but they're all full members. No, we have an excellent Board of Selectmen. So, that leaves you, sir. Until
Sure.
Stu becomes a full member, though, do you have any interest? I mean, you guys can reorganize again, obviously. People just beating down the door to do this job. So then I will entertain a motion to, well, first I guess I will nominate John as chair. Do I have a
Second.
And any discussion on it?
Well, I think John I think he's proven his value to the board in the time that he has been a member, be it full or associate member. And I think he's demonstrated, I think clearly his prior legal background is a key part of it. I think I can recall both Phil and going back to Randy Gruber, both had significant legal experience, although Randy was not a practicing lawyer. He still had that in his resume. So I think that it's important that the board be led by a capable and talented legal person, which I think John is.
Well, I am not a practicing attorney, but
Well,
my background
you
is
have been.
my background is what it is. So
Yeah.
I can't hide it. Very kind words, thank you. I would not expect to be. Well, we haven't voted me in, so I wouldn't.
We have
accept
not.
it.
So, I know this is going down for a long acceptance speech, but it's premature.
It sounds like the cabinet meeting the other day.
Like my mom.
Making parades.
Just move this along.
So, all right, any other discussion? Turns into a little bit of a love fest here.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor say, it's really just the 3 of us, so 3 full members, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so John is the new chair. We also have, what do we have? We have vice chair, and do we have a secretary in this? I
not
don't even remember.
really. I think in times when we haven't had the planning board assistance as we have now, we have had a secretary, but Josh is doing
Right.
a really great job in organizing meetings and postings and all of that I think I in the past have done. But I think it's the planning board folks, or the planning office folks.
I think the statute references a chairman and also a clerk.
Clerk, that's what I'm
Clerk.
thinking of.
What role the clerk has is unclear to me.
Notes.
Yeah,
Notes, which
Josh.
we defer to Josh.
Right.
so.
yeah.
Be good to have a vice chair, though.
Would be good to have a vice chair. I think, at times when the chair cannot be here, it's important to have a vice chair, so.
I mean, Dana was our vice chair until he submitted his resignation.
And ad hoc, was doing it.
Well, and you're the only other.
Right.
Until I officially am not on, and then Stu can step up and be vice chair if he chooses to. But I'll nominate Tom as vice chair.
Second.
Any discussion?
I think you'd make a fine vice chair.
Excellent.
I would agree.
Okay, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. I hear not every board goes that smoothly in town. All right, so
No comment. Would it,
yeah.
would it be appropriate to let the Board of Selectmen know if they're not already aware that we have two openings, or an
I'm sure they're
opening
home
for an
watching.
associate position
Yeah.
to get that filled?
Yeah, well, now that, I was gonna say I will do, but now that you're chair, if you want to
No, that's fine, you
shoot them an
You
email.
know the selectmen,
All right.
I don't have their
I
email
will,
address.
I will email the
Oh.
selectmen and let them
That's
know.
inconvenient.
So I'm up this, I'm just looking at the terms. That's it, that's really coming up. Tom 18, and then the associates every year, so. And have you, the associate members, let the selectmen know whether you wanted to be reappointed or not? They assume, if they don't hear
Yeah,
anything.
Yeah, that's what Josh said. so
Right.
we just have to-
If there's a desire for someone who's an associate member to become a full member, that's not automatic. That
Right.
you need to be
Right.
appointed as such by the
Yes.
selectmen, so you would certainly need to let the selectmen know
So
if you
my
want to be
email is
appointed.
gonna be, don't reappoint me, bump you up to full member. Okay, with that.
And find two more people then.
So, we could take a short recess and wait for Josh, unless there's other business to attend to.
I don't think there's anything else, and we have anything else on the agenda, so
Okay.
we'd best not talk.
You wanna do a quick recess for us? Okay, welcome back to the June 13, 2017 Ashland Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. We're just finalizing the decision we just modified, and Josh was kind enough to type those up. So if the three voting members could execute that.
The word draft is on
It says draft.
the last page. Yes, yes it does. I can print off the last page.
Yep.
Is that the signature?
That's
Oh,
fine.
all
Yeah.
of these
We
say
should
draft.
sign a
Yeah,
signature
I can,
page that has
fix
draft
that,
on
yeah.
it.
No problem at all.
He prints that out, so.
Can't sign it.
So we've got nothing for the 27th. Do I mean the 27th? Yes. And we've got nothing at all right now, but the 11th would be the next meeting after that. I'm out of the country, but you're
I've got nowhere to go.
here. That'd be,
I just told the entire town of Ashland, that, didn't I?
that's all right.
Oh, well.
Anyone else
Hopefully
have,
my wife is not listening.
have any, conflicts coming up that John should know about? So it'd be at July 11th and 25th.
Oh, August 15th, forget it, it's my wife's birthday.
That is the 3rd though, right? 'Cause
No, it's, yeah, okay, oh yeah, I'm sorry,
it'd
yes,
be
the
the
3rd,
8th
yeah,
and the
yeah.
22nd.
Okay, so forget about it.
All right. Any, while we wait for the signature page, any other new business at all?
Yeah, I'm not here, I'm out of state all of August, so, I won't be able to vote on anything.
Okay. Stu, do you have the decision? Actually, maybe I'll just.
Yeah, it'd be a good time to look at it if the decision is there. No, I think he brought it with him.
This is one copy, or?
Yes, I'll make,
We need to sign 3 or 4, don't we?
I can make
3?
copies of that one.
Okay.
Oh, you just need the one original.
Yeah,
That's fine.
Oh,
And we usually
just for, time, I, figured.
That's
that
fine.
way.
He's speaking. Look at it.
Harvey was wrong again, no thunderstorms.
Check that one out.
Did not come through?
Sign.
Well, I don't know if that will survive. Oops.
Well, actually, I can't read it because the printing is not lined up with Adam's printing, so it's, I think we're good. Because Josh read over all the changes he was gonna make, and he had them fall, so. Yep, but we're good. We're good.
All right, so it's my last time as chair. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Before we do that, we should make a motion to thank Phil for his service.
No motion, no
Yes.
vote needed.
Okay. We thank Phil for his service.
Absolutely a tough act to
I
follow.
move that we adjourn though.
All right.
Second.
I second
All
that.
in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Phil.
Who